as a leader, you want people to feel psychologically safe to come to you with knowledge of things they know. The most dangerous thing for a leader, it's not what you don't know, it's what your people know and that they're not sharing with you. And the earlier they share with you, the better, because it becomes a problem that is solvable versus a problem that is a crisis.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Jessy James, and today's guest is Henrietta Akpata. Henrietta is an executive leader, board director, educator, and strategist whose career spans AI, cloud enterprise software, and commercial growth across startups, mid-sized companies, and Fortune 500 organizations. Over nearly 2 decades at IBM and later through leadership roles at Sprinkler and Metadata, she has led work across product growth, go-to-market strategy, innovation, and helping organizations translate emerging technologies into meaningful business outcomes. Today, Henrietta serves as executive fellow and professional lecturer at Marist University, serves on the board of directors of Hudson Valley Credit Union, where she chairs the governance and nomination committee, and is co-founder and co-CEO of New England Fancy Food Company. She also brings a strong academic foundation with graduate studies at UCLA Anderson and MIT Sloan, focused on business and AI. Henrietta, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Jessy. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. Henrietta, I'm curious, who is someone from your early life or even an early experience that you had that shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
Look, I would say both my parents shaped the kind of leader I am today. But moving on from personal to professional, I didn't start as a leader. I certainly started as a software engineer. I wrote tens of thousands of lines of code and shipped 12 different major product releases. That technical foundation has given me credibility that no title could ever give me, right? And so that gives me an insight in terms of understanding what I'm asking an engineer to provide. The real shaping, though, when it comes to leadership, didn't happen until I moved from building products to building teams. Leading people through ambiguity is completely different from a discipline perspective. And I learned that the hard way. So let me give you an example. When IBM acquired Red Hat for $34 billion, I was handed a challenge with no playbook. I had to build a framework while executing. 6 different CMOs, 5 different business units, plus Red Hat, 2 competing return on investment models. That experience taught me leadership in a way that the fact that leadership is being able, it's not having answers in the construct of ambiguity. It's being able to create the conditions to find those answers and find them. I was doing research early in AI in 1992, long before it became a business strategy. That long arc shaped how I see what is happening today. This is not a new story. It is a story that is finally reaching scale. So there are mentors professionally. So let me land with that. Like Elisa Macklin, Felicity Carson, Buell Duncan that were there, and Ulrich Leutner, who helped shape me most. They didn't try to mold me. They actually focused on where I had strengths and invested in that. And so that is how I try and lead today. Now, whether it's in the boardroom, as you articulated, co-founding a company, teaching a class, or driving projects at Marist, that is how I lead.
Yeah, thank you for that. In this podcast, we're really exploring the essence of leadership, true leadership. And of course, it means different things to different people. I'm curious, what does true leadership mean to you?
So what does true leadership mean to me, Jessy? Well, here's the thing. I have a working definition, right? I don't know that it's final, but it is simple. And that was the goal. It's to create the conditions. Again, going back to your initial question or my response to your first question, it's creating the conditions where people can do their best work toward something that matters, a shared goal, right? A vision, a mission. Everything else beyond that is management to me. So that is my working definition of true leadership, right? An org chart can give you authority, but people give you leadership. For a lot of executives, there might be some discomfort related to that because it does really matter a lot. I learned that the hard way through trial and error early in my career. One of the best pieces of feedback I ever received was from a team member. Here's what he said. He said that Henrietta, always listen, that I'm a great listener and someone who can then take key needs forward. That meant more to me than any award I've ever received as a leader or as a manager. I once joined a role with no partner marketing background, and it was in partner marketing and innovation. There were 4 distinct business areas we needed to tackle, and there was no existing framework, no playbook handed to me. I hired people to build a team. We built programs from scratch and stood them up. And ultimately, the result from that is that we grew partner recruitment 4 times over. Here's what leadership plays a role in this particular scenario. It is about my helping create the structure and put a structure in place so that others could succeed, not necessarily what I did personally, right? It's more about creating that structure so that other people will succeed then and subsequent to my leaving that role and anybody that came after that. The leaders that have seen fail were really the ones that didn't do strategy right. It is, to go back to my initial comment about leadership being given to you by people. It's the leaders that their people don't tell the bad news early. That's a gift as a leader, that your people feel psychologically safe to give you bad news early, because early bad news is just a problem that you can solve. Late bad news, on the other hand, is a crisis for you to solve for. And as a leader, you don't want to be solving for crisis. Of course, you will encounter those, but you're better off having fewer crises than not.
Got it. Boy, I just got carried away with that response. I'm literally getting goosebumps here. Can you share about a time when you realized that your way of leading, living, no longer met the demands of your work and life and growth was needed?
Absolutely. So let me start by saying this. We're now in this golden era of AI, right? AI can synthesize data, draft strategy, forecast outcomes. But what it can't do is walk into a room of uncertain people and make them feel seen and capable. That's intrinsically human. And that's why leadership matters even more. And now to tie that back to the question that you asked, well, the AI era is where we all start to feel, at least for me, that my picture or my comfort zone of what leadership feels like, it's no longer something that I want to continue without taking action. You mentioned earlier in your introduction that I went to MIT. That was a deliberate strategy. You cannot feel comfortable in a way where you are satisfied with your expertise. You want to constantly disrupt yourself. And for me, that disruption was, yes, I'd been doing AI research since 1992, before AI became a business strategy. But it has evolved. Things are changing hourly, daily when it comes to AI. So that was my way of making a conscious, disciplined choice to go back and refresh my knowledge set. I don't need the certificates, right, from AI for business strategy from MIT. I didn't need the certificate for AI for business strategy in AI for pharma and biotech. But that was a choice and an observation that I understood that my skill set, my expertise is getting stale. And as fast as I'm trying to tie this back to my teaching, to teach students from a practitioner perspective, things that I've learned and gained expertise in, that AI is actually rewriting that book as fast as possible from a curriculum perspective. And so that was me making a conscious choice to go back to do that.
Yeah. And, what stood out to me, in your response is that it is really the human touch that is so important and needs to continue. I'm curious, what is the impact? What impact did all of this have on you, especially in terms of how you lead today?
So in terms of how I lead today, what I consciously do is listen. And that's critical, right? And in the midst of delivering my domain expertise, what I do is consciously listen to whether it's my students coming to me, asking questions during class, office hours, colleagues who have questions. And so for me, the impact is really being a better listener, making sure, and frankly, I think this is critical, that part of my contribution is democratizing how people learn, think critically. And that's what led me to teaching. And that's what led me as a practitioner of AI to co-author and publish, right? From an AI perspective, because I think I have something to say. I have influence to deliver as things evolve over time.
Thinking about your journey over the past few years, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself and for your own growth?
So, in terms of growth, right, I certainly think that the biggest growing edge for me right now is not any one role, right? It's operating with full accountability across all of the different roles that I've mentioned. Technologist, well, you mentioned technologist, educator, AI practitioner, strategist, visiting professor. Sorry?
Entrepreneur.
Yes, that's the piece. Entrepreneur, co-founder, and co-leading. All of those roles. I think it's really about operating with full accountability across all of them simultaneously, right? Whether I'm teaching courses, driving projects, as executive fellow, publishing, it requires a different kind of leadership. And I think it's the investment. You asked me, looking back, I think I want to look forward because that's what I'm doing now. I'm taking all of those leadership investments and knowledge and synthesizing and integrating them simultaneously because it's a different kind of leadership that is called for when you have a portfolio. It's not one single organization where I'm running a single organization. Yes, I'm co-leading, I co-founded, right? It's the context switching at the levels that demand clarity about each role, right? What each role actually requires, and the self-awareness to show up fully in each one, right? That discipline is one that I'm actively developing right now. And I think it's the one that I haven't mastered and I'm currently investing in because I want to be able to master that because that's how I want to continue to grow my career into the future. I've spent 30 plus years developing things like pattern recognition in technology, business, and marketing, given my background. But AI, as I keep going back to, is disrupting my own expertise, as I just said, in terms of what I'm able to do in the classroom than I expected. So things that I would teach the students in terms of building curriculum, AI can just blow out of the water in minutes. So for me, it's growing that edge and resisting comforts or laurels of what I already know. It's what I'm doing now. How do I master this simultaneous portfolio of things that I'm doing
Yeah.
all together?
And how are you doing that? How are you investing in yourself, especially as you consistently, with accountability, context switch to these different businesses and engagements that you have? And if I may add one more question to that, I'm also curious, what difference is all of this making in terms of how you show up as a leader?
Definitely. So in terms of how I show up as a leader, I'm more engaged and I'm more careful to listen because active listening really creates or starts to create an environment where people feel psychologically safe. A lot of times people discount psychological safety as something that is somewhat soft. It's not. It's really a competitive advantage. And as I said earlier, as a leader, you want people to feel psychologically safe, to come to you with knowledge of things they know. The most dangerous thing for a leader, it's not what you don't know, it's what your people know and that they're not sharing with you. And the earlier they share with you, the better, because it becomes a problem that is solvable versus a problem that is a crisis. So that's how it's showing up, right? In terms of your other question about context switching, right? I mentioned earlier that is the fact that I went to MIT for certifications in AI for business, strategy, and AI for pharmaceutical and biotech. It's not because I need the credentials, it's because I think currency, staying current, is a discipline in and of itself. Don't assume that you know. Even for someone like me that was doing AI research in 1992, I think the most dangerous thing to respond to that question that you have, specifically, the most dangerous thing I could do right now is assume that my experience makes me an expert in what's happening next, whatever that is, right? Whether it's as an entrepreneur or a domain expertise in AI or wherever that takes me as a teacher or an educator. Curiosity has to win over certainty. And that's really where I want to land in terms of that response. Every day, curiosity has to win over certainty in assumptions that you know. So that's how I approach that.
Yeah. And Henrietta, what's your vision for your leadership, for your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
So what's my vision in terms of impact? So I want to be clear. I teach. I did not step back from executive life. I added to it. Co-founding, co-leading a company, chairing a board committee, teaching at Marist as a visiting lecturer, and then initiating and driving projects as executive fellow, publishing on AI. They're not separate chapters for me. They're an integrated practice. And that's the way I look at it. Some people will refer to it as a portfolio, but I see it as an integrated practice. It is an evolution for me, right? Not a chapter change or a switch. Listen, co-founding New England Fancy Food Company, it's where the full leadership weight really lands, right? Think about this. There is no institutional safety for me. No $620 million ecosystem behind me, or $220 million of a business behind me, or $500 million, right? Every decision has direct commercial consequences. So keeps everything else sharp, right? So in that construct, so it matters, right? I have a dual role. I'm a visiting lecturer. So I teach management, I teach AI management, I teach international marketing. These are courses that are as good as a practitioner, the person bringing that practitioner lens into the classroom. As an executive fellow, I initiate and I drive projects that connect students to their learning and how that plays in industry. So that those are things that I'm seeing as you ask the question about impact, right? How am I taking the things that I'm doing, this integrated practice, and bringing it to life and making sure that I'm delivering impact in the various areas that I'm currently engaged? Think about it. As a chair of the Governance and Nominations Committee at Hudson Valley Credit Union, an $8 billion institution, it has given me a fiduciary and governance lens that most technology executives never develop. So it demands for me and the way that I lead in terms of the vision of the future, deliberate, accountable approach to leadership, one that is structural, right? That's a highly regulated industry and one that I have to really think consciously about in terms of how I approach leadership. And so to wrap it all up, when I write about AI and publish about it, whether it is AI in multiple industries or biotech and pharmaceuticals, what I'm doing is translating frameworks that I'm living into something that others can consume. I could also say that about teaching, taking frameworks from my real life experiences, applying frameworks to my real life experiences, excuse me. So ultimately, I joke that I'm a shameless technology optimist. What does that mean? It means that I make no apologies for being that, right? But I want to be able to bridge technical and the human. That's where my impact lies, the big picture, right? Because many AI conversations, yes, now it's AI, but the technology changes, leadership doesn't change. That should be clear, right? Tomorrow it could be quantum computing, and that's around the corner. Right now it's AI. If you take all the conversations about technology, the one that is really outsized is AI conversations. It's either breathlessly optimistic, or is this apocalypse, impending apocalypse where people are fearful? The work is in the middle. And that's where I want to be able to have impact and make my voice heard. So if I were just to close now, I'd say I want to put on my lens as a teacher. If the leaders I teach today, right, or the people I co-build with and develop are more self-aware and more human-centered, right, tying that back to what I just said, and they're less paralyzed by uncertainty than they would have been, I will consider that a meaningful contribution. So that kind of brings all together, that whole technology or technical human centered approach to technology. It's really what I'm aiming for. And I hope that is something that I'm able to impact in all the different areas that I work in.
Henrietta, where do you feel most tested right now? Like, what challenges are stretching you the most, both in leadership and in life?
I'd say context switching. That's really where I'm most tested. I mentioned it earlier. It's the ability to bring myself fully to every different role I'm playing and hold myself accountable every time. There's no, okay, I'm showing up for this and I'm at 50%. It has to be 150% for every single role. And of course, the context switches. I'm not going to do them all at the same time, right? That's really where I'm being stretched, if anything. And I'm really working hard to master that. And I haven't.
And where are you sort of, feeling the need to grow the most, to develop the most in order to meet this challenge of context switching?
As an entrepreneur, right? The other things that I'm doing, I have domain expertise and long history, whether it's AI, whether it's teaching, yes, perhaps not in an academic environment, but just as sales, someone who leads and has led multiple sales enablement sessions. So training and teaching is not necessarily a new thing, except the environment. But as an entrepreneur, that's net new for me, right? Because it involves multiple things. It involves, as I said, no safety, right? In terms of backing. Everything has commercial consequences, every decision, every nuance, from raising capital, right, to actually being able to operate and scale. That's the piece that is really my focus from that perspective.
And to sort of manage all of this, to hold it all together, right? Competing priorities. What are the ways in which you feel you personally need to grow and develop?
I need to really do more when it comes to taking care of my health, right? I don't have bad health, but I don't want to wait. It means making time for myself and my family to make sure that we engage in health related activities, exercise to be more precise, right? Consistently, not intermittent. Something that becomes integrated in this practice that I've built, right? Where it's not stepping out. I found that challenging, right? because you said personally, and it was kind of looking at all the different things I do. I think that's the one that I'm really struggling with, and I need to do better.
Got it. And I'm also curious, and I think a lot of listeners will probably be wondering as well. One of the questions that a lot of leaders deal with is, how do you manage time? How do you really hold time while we do the things that we want to do? How do you look at time?
So obviously time is finite. And so I'm one of those people that have lists, right? And every day before I close shop, stop what I'm doing, I look ahead from a time perspective, right? Because it's the end of the day, or end of work day, time is winding down. What do I have ahead of me today to finish today or for the evening? What do I have coming the next day? And what do I have for the rest of the week? What I try and do, and you asked me earlier who had the most influence in terms of um, early development. I said my parents, really. I remember when I was 10 years old, and my father, who travels a lot, came back home and handed me this book on motivation. It wasn't really a book, it was a binder, right? My mom is a homemaker. She made everything run, made sure we had a happy childhood. And I read that, right? And so for me, kind of fast forwarding, I know that the things that I do for myself in terms of success, even when I'm struggling, especially when it comes to time, because that's where I'm not sure that I'm doing the best that I can in terms of mastering. I always go back to that to inform me. From a time perspective, that motivational book he gave me, it really taught me some key things. Create 1 to 5 things or 3 to 5 things that you must do the next day. I land at 3 because you always have 2 things creep into it. When you add something, you must remove from it. And so that is my time management, because I have a long list of things to do. I have strategic buckets for the things that I do. And so the strategic buckets decides or determines what I would do for the next day, right? So if I need to get ready for a class, obviously, and the class is in 2 days, it has priority because it's in the strategic bucket for teaching, right? So, but then what do I need to do within that bucket? Get ready for class, grade papers for students because I want to hand it back to them. So that's the way I approach time. But other than that, it's very granular in terms of what I've explained to you. I'm still really challenged in trying to master how that all manifests itself. So I have my approach, the lists, the big lists, the short list of what I must get done the next day, organized by strategic buckets that prioritizes what am I doing today? Do I need to work on funding for the business from an entrepreneurial perspective on Friday versus I'm teaching on Wednesday, and I have to prepare lecture notes for my students and make sure their papers are graded so I can hand it to them. So that's my approach to time. So time management is always a premium for me.
Fascinating. So this last question is more of an invitation, Henrietta. You have the time and space here to offer to our listeners whatever is top of the mind and heart for you. Anything at all, take your time. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of do a couple of things, right? And this is what I've found in terms of leaders that excel. They've made peace, and that's kind of what I've been articulating to you in terms of responding to the question about time. They've made peace with ambiguity. They are not waiting for certainty to make decisions. They make good decisions with as little information or as incomplete information as possible, right? And the key is to course correct. So think about the example I gave about the acquisition of Red Hat. There was no playbook. I built my own while executing it. And that's what you need to do in this disruption era, right? From a leadership perspective. So going back to AI for a minute, because it's top of mind for everybody, I want to say that the people who do well, or leaders that do well, is not a question about technology, it's about leadership. AI is a question about leadership. That's how you want to treat it. Because too many executives delegate to IT and then wait for a briefing or someone to report to them. I think they need to really be mindful and pull themselves into the conversation, start asking questions about how the decisions they make could be better informed or changed by AI, right? How they develop talent today in the construct of what's happening from a technological point of view and how value is defined. And I must say, do not overlook psychological safety. As I said earlier, it's a competitive advantage and one that you should always look at. Quick story here. When I had a team that decided that they would make a choice of spending 35% of their time working with the sales team using an ROI tool that they built in terms of sales engagements. That was because they felt psychologically safe. It wasn't because they were really interested in solving problems. So you want to build teams or create a psychologically safe environment for teams to be much more interested in solving problems, even from an unconventional perspective, rather than really just looking at managing what there is out there. And so that's really what I see. The leaders that struggle are ones that I feel defaulting to command and control or treating AI as a cost reduction exercise or automation, et cetera. I would veer away from that and really just look at the human technology interaction. And that's really critical. And I would just land with this and close. From my perspective, learning is a lifelong endeavor, and mastering the ability to creatively solve problems should be democratized. To use your term, a democratized superpower, right? I believe that. I live that. I stay curious. And I'd advise you to stay curious, stay human. And I think the rest is just details. And I take this and carry this through, whether it's in the boardroom, building teams, co-founding a company, it doesn't really matter, right? Focus on the individuals that are in front of you and work with them. That's what leading is all about.
Henrietta, I so enjoyed this conversation. There were so many nuggets of wisdom, thunderbolts of wisdom, and insight. So thank you so much. And I'm sure that whoever is listening will equally benefit from what you've shared. I'm excited for this to go out into the world. Thank you so much for coming into to be part of the True Leadership Podcast.
Thank you very much, Jessy, for having me as part of the True Leadership Podcast. I enjoyed our conversations and I enjoyed your insightful and probing questions. And I probably may have veered towards a little bit of personal. And I hope it just kind of brings a little bit more color than just focusing on the business aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.